The company that wasn't supposed to survive. Imagine boarding a flight today and discovering that almost every commercial airplane carrying millions of passengers around the world comes from just two companies. Now imagine that one of those companies didn't even exist a few decades ago. It wasn't founded by a visionary billionaire. It wasn't built in Silicon Valley. And it wasn't even a single company. It began as what many people dismissed as an expensive government experiment destined to fail. Today, that same experiment is Boeing's only true global rival, a company that, in 2024 alone, generated close to €67 billion in revenue and delivered more commercial aircraft than any manufacturer on Earth. So how did a fractured group of struggling European aerospace companies pull off what almost everyone believed was impossible? To understand Airbus, we have to go back to the mid-1960s. At the time, commercial aviation was dominated almost entirely by American manufacturers, Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Lockheed. If an airline wanted a modern jetliner, it bought American. Europe had aerospace talent, but it was scattered. France had its own manufacturers. So did Germany, Britain, and Spain. Each had skilled engineers. None had the capital to compete alone. As commercial air traffic expanded rapidly in the second half of the 1960s, European governments began discussing a large-capacity civil transport aircraft that could challenge a market almost entirely controlled by the United States. The conversation had actually started even earlier, when France and Germany began talks in 1965 about building a European high-capacity, short-haul jet together. The math was brutal. Designing, certifying, and manufacturing a commercial aircraft required years of research and billions of dollars before a single plane could be sold. No individual European company could shoulder that risk alone, not without going bankrupt first. So Europe did something unprecedented. Instead of building another national champion, several countries pooled their aerospace industries into a single entity. Airbus was formally founded on December 18, 1970, headquartered in Toulouse, France. It began life as a consortium of European aerospace companies, structured under French law. The ownership structure looked nothing like a normal corporation. France's state-owned Aerospace held just under 38%, West Germany's Deutsche Airbus held another 38%, British Aerospace held 20%, and Spain's CASA held the remaining 4%. Getting here wasn't smooth. The program almost collapsed before it even started. Airbus's technical director faced a critical decision: redesign the aircraft around American engines, or stick with British engines at a steep cost disadvantage. He secretly chose the American redesign, and when the decision became public, the British government pulled out of the consortium entirely. Think about that. One of the founding nations walked away before Airbus had even delivered a single aircraft. Most American analysts wrote Airbus off immediately. Government bureaucrats, they said, don't build world-class airplanes. Multi-country partnerships create endless red tape. Many predicted collapse within a few years. They weren't wrong to be skeptical. Airbus had no reputation, almost no customers, and limited production capacity, and it was walking straight into a fight with the strongest aviation companies on the planet. Airbus's answer was its first aircraft, the A300. The A300 first flew in October 1972 and entered commercial service with Air France in 1974. At the time, the industry consensus was that long-haul wide-body jets needed 3 or 4 engines. Airbus bet against that consensus. The A300 used just 2, a genuinely controversial choice for a wide-body aircraft in the early 1970s. Airbus engineers believed advances in jet engine reliability made twin-engine wide-bodies both safe and dramatically cheaper to operate. They were right, but being right didn't translate into immediate sales. Orders trickled in slowly. Factories built aircraft faster than airlines bought them. Inside Europe, some governments quietly questioned whether to keep funding the project at all. Airbus's response wasn't to cut losses. It was to change tactics entirely. Executives flew across the globe demonstrating the aircraft directly to airline decision-makers. They offered unusually generous financing terms and extended evaluation periods, prioritizing long-term trust over short-term revenue. That patience mattered, because an airline doesn't buy a plane for 5 years. It buys it for 30. Every purchase is a multi-decade, multi-billion-dollar bet. The real turning point came in the 1980s. The A320 program was launched in 1984, engineered as a narrow-body, short to medium-range jetliner packed with technical innovations, most notably fly-by-wire, computer-mediated flight controls instead of traditional mechanical linkages. It first flew in 1987 and entered commercial service in 1988. This was a genuine industry shock. Many veteran pilots distrusted the idea of a computer interpreting their control inputs before the aircraft responded. Airbus's engineers argued computers could react faster than humans, catch dangerous pilot errors, and reduce workload during the most critical phases of flight. Because of its success, Airbus stretched and shrank the A320's fuselage to create an entire family of aircraft, a longer version and 2 shorter versions, all sharing the same core design. This is where Airbus's real strategic genius shows up: cockpit commonality. Every aircraft in the family shared nearly identical cockpit layouts and flight control logic. A pilot trained on one Airbus model could transition to another with minimal retraining. For airlines, that meant lower training costs, easier scheduling, and more flexible crews, which made buying more Airbus aircraft an easy financial decision. Airbus wasn't just selling planes anymore. It was selling an ecosystem, years before ecosystem became a Silicon Valley buzzword. By the 1990s, Boeing had something it hadn't dealt with in decades: a real global competitor. Every new aircraft launch became a genuine battle over fuel efficiency, range, maintenance cost, and price. Then Airbus made its riskiest bet yet, the A380, the largest passenger aircraft ever built, with 2 full passenger decks and typical seating for over 500 passengers. Airbus's underlying bet was that the future of air travel meant giant hub airports connected by giant aircraft. The industry moved the opposite direction. Airlines and passengers wanted more direct point-to-point routes on smaller, more fuel-efficient jets. The A380 was an engineering triumph and a commercial disappointment. Airbus eventually ended production. While Airbus absorbed that lesson, it kept investing in what airlines actually wanted next: newer, more efficient versions of its existing families, all built around lower fuel burn, lower maintenance costs, and longer range. The results of that strategy are visible right now. In 2024, Airbus delivered 766 commercial aircraft to 86 customers worldwide, with its best-selling single-aisle family alone accounting for over 600 of those deliveries. By 2025, Airbus stood as the world's largest aircraft maker by deliveries, holding an order backlog above 8,600 units and posting 2024 revenue near €67 billion. Meanwhile, Boeing has spent recent years navigating production delays, supply chain strain, and intense regulatory scrutiny, a stretch that has visibly shifted the competitive balance in commercial aviation for the first time in the modern jet era. Most people assume Airbus succeeded because European governments threw money at it. History says otherwise. Plenty of heavily subsidized industrial projects have failed anyway. Airbus won because it paired long-term capital with genuine engineering risk-taking, standardized manufacturing across borders, and built products around real airline economics rather than chasing whatever Boeing was doing. Its biggest competitive advantage was never political backing. It was patience, a willingness to lose money for over a decade while building trust that eventually became inescapable market share. Today, when you board almost any commercial flight in the world, there's a real chance you're sitting in an Airbus. In 1970, almost nobody would have believed that sentence.